I mean, I haven't looked into a huge amount of what they have done. I've just heard about them and wondered why they do things the way they do. But no, even the mask is a face, because it's not a blank face. It's actually the Guy Fawkes mask from V for Vendetta. And even though they call themselves anonymous, that is still a name, and there's still a face. It's just the Guy Fawkes face. It's just anyone could be wearing that face. And I don't think it's a good idea to put a face on anything. Which is I do agree with anonymous in the sense that there needs to be transparency, but. A face on something? Well, if you put a face on something, then it's represented by whoever that is. Che Guevara himself, he's considered as this huge, I think he was Cuban. Was he Cuban? Revolutionary. I mean, I haven't really researched that much into him. That's as much attention I pay to so-called iconic imagery of revolution. But no, I mean, when you give it a face, you basically purport it to be now owned, and owned by a particular person and represented by a particular person. So it sort of throws objectivity down the drain, as it were, and I personally do see evolution as superior to revolution, in the sense that, as I described earlier, the thoughts must occur first. And remember the old Gandhi quote, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. Okay? That means that the change must first occur within yourself. Within your own heart and mind, as it were. Well, not heart, because that's just a blood pump. Granted, it operates with magnetism, but it's still just a pump. But yeah, when they know in their heart, as it were, and in their mind, that things can be better, we should pursue non-violent routes to this change, and the end result must be non-violent. Okay, non-violence does take centre stage in a lot of the RBE thinking. It's the idea that we should be able to provide for every person on the planet. The reason why we're not at the moment is because we've erected a social structure and a monetary structure and a power structure and a religious structure and all these other substructures to perpetuate a system that seems to have worked for us so much that we can't let it go, seemingly. And that is the monetary system. I tell you what, if the monetary system was anywhere near as simple as it was right now as it was when, say, for example, basic barter systems came into existence. If it was that simple, we'd be able to give away money, give up money like that, just straight away. We'd be like, yeah, okay. But the reason why money has held sway so much now is because of its inherent unfair function of essentially consolidating wealth where wealth is held. It's a bit like the Louis C.K. joke where he talks about only having $15 in his account, so the No, he only had $5 in his account, and the bank charged him $20 for only having $5 in his account. So he had negative $15. And they're just saying to him, "You don't have enough money, sir. Your funds are insufficient." And he's like, "I would completely agree. I find my funds grossly inefficient." But no, the thing is, when you do have money, that goes in the opposite direction. They give you money because you have money, and and it's very, very funny, the Louis C.K. routine where he talks about that. But yeah, that is in part how the system operates. It rewards people for having money, and that really does get up people's noses, and it really does upset people. The only thing is, people are so angry, but they're apathetic at the same time, and they're completely disarmed, and a lot of times not very educated. And as a result, all their actions, end up with is just them idly complaining about the world that we live in, saying, "Oh, these politicians are all shit. You should just drop them down in the middle of the ocean." Well, actually, they probably wouldn't even say that, because at least that's an idea for a suggestion for change. But they would just idly complain, and when people call their bluff about it and say, "Well, what do you think we should do to actually make this world a better place?" and they don't have an answer for it. I've spoken to innumerable amounts of people who are just like this, and who, complain and complain and complain and complain and complain, and then when you're so sick and tired of their complaining, you pin them down and say, well, you don't pin them down, but you just turn to them and say, "Okay, well, what would be your suggestion for an alternative?" And they shut up. That's, I think that is probably one of the best logic bombs ever. Okay, what is your solution for a sustainable future that can provide for everyone a high standard of living? What's your solution to get there? What's your plan of action? Well, that would be a bit cruel, actually, to ask for a plan of action, because not even those of us who are advocates of a resource-based economic model, or natural law economy, whatever you want to call it, we don't even have a transition plan, because we have transition ideas, but there can't be any plan, because we live in an emergent universe. Everything's always changing. How can you set a concrete plan ahead of time while not being able to see into the future, And that's why, we have to move dynamically. But at least we can describe the train of thought. We can describe the train of thought that arrives at the decision. So, we've got that. So I ask people, well, what's your suggestion for an alternative? What solutions do you advocate? And and that seems to shut people up. Because they've been conditioned to be so angry, and and so open to being exposed to all these negativities, because we have things like the news media, whose tacit motivation, as it seems, is just to make and keep the public scared of anything and everything. Because if you're scared 24/7, then you're more likely to turn to your government to protect you. And that's why it's done. That is why it's done, because it's one of the best ways to engender acceptance of governmental force and quote-unquote corruption and anything else they want to throw at us, because we're just like, well, you've got all this firepower and all this money, and you talk big, and you make us shout our voices and wave our flags. You've convinced us that you're the big bad boy, and who shouldn't be messed with, but he's a good guy at the same time. Because the thing is, he neglects his own population, but he has a strong stance on war. That kind of guy. That's what's attractive to the public, because it gives the veneer of having any clue whatsoever about what we objectively need to do to actually stop violence and, help create the conditions where we can provide for everyone on the planet. There's no ideas there, So really, this needs to happen from the grassroots level, and that's where all social changes come from. The social changes that really mattered, the small steps in the larger race, as it were, for a better world. And really, I'd say it is a race. It's a race against time. There's, one thing that I know for certain is that I hate deadlines. I really do. I'm actually recording this podcast at, I started recording this at 2:30 in the morning. So basically, this is very last minute, the recording of this podcast. I hate deadlines, but I recognise that as a whole, just your very mortality is a time limit and a deadline. Why do you think it's called a deadline? There is that deadline. Because we can't expect to keep going on the way we are and expect everything to be fine. Christ, just look up anything about what's happening with Fukushima right now. That reactor plant has the potential to wipe out all life on the Northern Hemisphere. By all means, don't believe me. Look this up, okay? I'm not even going to get started, because it would just get me severely depressed. But Chernobyl essentially was a fart in comparison to this bomb. Yeah, the explosion here, Chernobyl would be a fart in comparison. But we recognise that, that needs to be addressed, and that needs to be, altered as soon as possible. The very complex itself is melting into the ground, and it's sinking. But I'm not going to talk any more on Fukushima right now, because that would just depress me even more, because I don't know enough about it to be able to suggest an actual mechanical an engineering solution for it, because it requires a physics and engineering solution, and I'm not engineering minded. So the methods of revolution or evolution that we need to engage is non-violent. Do you know why? Do you know one of the biggest reasons why we have to go for non-violent? Because the establishment they can't do anything to you if you are non-violent. What can they charge unless they just start making shit up as they go? Which, granted, it does happen sometimes when they're backed into a corner. They just have to make some stuff up. Take my arrest, for example. but they can't really charge you with any kind of public order offence or